Let's move on now to something that has to do still on infrastructure, but this one talks about road infrastructure to make it easy to have access more to the southern part of Nigeria, the southeastern part of Nigeria. So the construction of the Second Niger Bridge has flagged off. So the federal government has flagged off construction of 17.55 kilometer access road to Second Niger Bridge. So through the Ministry of Works, officially, this construction has commenced, the construction of the access road to the Second Niger Bridge in Asaba. The strategic project, part of the Phase 2A development, aims to connect the south-south and the southeast regions to foster economic growth and national integration. Yes, connection is very, very important. The need for the Second Niger Bridge has long been a conversation because the first Niger Bridge has become like kind of small to accommodate the flow of traffic that goes through that area. So there's a need for a Second Niger Bridge. And then constructing the roads that will provide access to the Second Niger Bridge is what the federal government has actually flagged off now. We hope that happens quickly so that when we talk about road connection to the southeastern part from the south-south becomes very, very easy.
Yeah, I think part of this administration's blueprint of development is to create some legacy projects that, of course, will last for a very long period of time in terms of opening up the Nigerian space. And I think we need really more roads as a country because access is critical. If you see other nations and see the interconnectivity between the roads, because it also goes a long way in actually easing the pressure of pricing. You can imagine that if I'm going to be going to Onitsha, for example, and I'm stuck in that bridge for 4 hours, I'm running petrol. And then, of course, I have to find the cost of that petrol from commuters at the end of the day. And so all of these heighten the cost of goods and services because logistics become very expensive because there are no alternative roads. You imagine that, of course, people who are traveling, for example, from here to Calabar, rather than spend about 12 hours, 13 hours on the road, and if the coastal road is just complete, they can do that in 4 or 5 hours and in that part of the environment. So these are things that, of course, we need to invest in because as number of vehicles are increasing and as population is also growing, commuting is expanding, the need to also expand the infrastructure cannot be overemphasized. And I think that is exactly what is happening, that of course you have connected the road, and of course you have to also ensure that the access road to be able to connect to that major road, which has so much money. But I think it's also important for us to also think in the longer term in terms of sustainability, how we're going to keep those roads always good. Government also must be thinking about making revenue from those roads so that those facilities that are taken to build those roads are able to be paid back. And then, of course, the nation is not so much in deficit. And I think I'm very, very important in that. I think it was Rewan Bismarck who was on one of our sister stations recently saying how private contribution to development of this road can actually make a whole lot of sense for the country. We must look beyond borrowing in terms of constructing infrastructure and see how we can also use alternative means to get people to participate and see how they can back off the money from the usage of those facilities. But I think it's important that the south-south, the east-southeast are integrated because there's so much that happens between those entities. So if we have enough connecting points to those areas, I think it will help commerce, it will help trade, it will also ease people movement up. And I hope that this project doesn't take too long to be completed.
So you talked about commercialization of the road or having some form of partnership, rather. But if you have that partnership between maybe private individuals or private companies, would that not commercialize the road, maybe by having some form of toll system? How is that going to happen?
Yeah, of course. I think I am an advocate of tolling, but especially it has to be electronic tolling, and such a way that we don't have blocks on the road. We just have cameras And then, of course, we see how our vehicles are registered, that as soon as wallets are created for every vehicle that passes, then government can take their revenue in real time. And then, of course, we can know how much money we are getting. And then the citizens who passes those roads can actually hold government accountable to say, we have made X amount of money. And then, of course, this road is in this bad state. So these are the things that, of course, give our rights and duties as citizens, that once we do what we're supposed to do and do them very well, and ensuring that these monies are not entering into private pocket, then, of course, we can have better facilities. We can build much more road. I can but continue to use the UAE example, the project Salik, that is earning them over 800 billion annually. Now, you can imagine how much that money is and see why that environment keeps developing. For every single car that passes through the toll, of course, 4 dirham is taken. And that 4 dirham means so much to the United Arab Emirates government. And they are making so much money from the road, and they are building more infrastructure that they are now even oversaturated with infrastructure. I think we can just copy and learn from these nations and then do copy those best practices and do things well. And then, of course, we all have the benefit of a proper logistics, and then people don't waste too much of energy having to travel. Yesterday, I was traveling to Imo, and somebody was saying, look, we have wasted so much time because of the delay of the aircraft. We are sitting down here. If it was when road was good, from Lagos to Benin, it's 3 hours. Imagine that I left Lagos at the time I left yesterday to the airport around 5 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, I'll be in Benin. By 10 o'clock, I'll be in Owerri. So I don't need to even fly if the roads are good. And I think these are the things that government really needs to understand, that, of course, people have alternative, and even the cost of flying will reduce because see, people have the road alternative. I was at the airport by after 5, and I didn't leave there till after 10. So if we have a good road, I would prefer a road option and then drive straight to where I'm going within the same space of time, and then I arrive at that place. So these are things that we need to do, because if roads are fine, then, of course, travel becomes easy, and the citizens have the benefit of it.
Talking about citizens having the benefit of a good road infrastructure, you know the activities that happen along that Onitsha, from Asaba to Onitsha to down to other eastern states, and then those coming in from the southeastern parts of the country. There's a lot of commerce actually happening around that area. And the southeastern region happens to be like an industrial hub for the country. So how do you think this is going to help industrialization in the country?
First of all, when you are campaigning to become the president of a nation, or you're campaigning to become the governor of a state, there are instruments with which you can work across board to bring about the fruition of your agenda, whether it be the state government, the federal government as the national government. And I think we should also start holding on to the garment of our representatives in the green chamber, in the red chamber, and in the House of Assembly of the states too, because they sold some things by way of manifestos to the people that when you vote me to become your representative in parliament, I'm going to carry out, fulfill X, Y, Z. Now, that is why when we have senators or lawmakers in the House of Reps, and in your constituency, you're not bringing any developmental project. It's an indictment on you. And some of them have been there for how many years? So now, and we have these regional development commissions, where we have the South Development Commission, right? This is South. Then the Southeast Development Commission, the Northeast Development.
Delta.
So the Southeast Development Commission and the Niger Delta Development Commission. You just spoke about how the road, how commercial activities, is sprawled around those areas that leads to the southeastern part, and how the same thing brings from the southeastern part down to the south, and from the south you are accessing the southwest. Those roads, can't we have, now that we will have the Southwest Development Commission, can't they just come together to build this? Can't they just come together to set up this infrastructure? These 3 development commissions, they can come together, set up this infrastructure to connect, not even road. If the federal government is tackling the road, then 3 of them can come together and say, okay, this year, as far as the budget for the development commissions is concerned, can we put a rail station that can run through these three the geopolitical zones? Can we put a rail station that can do that? And we allow it to be the remit of just the state government to have a rail station that can run internally within the state. But can we link up? Because it took me back to before the emergence of the development, before the emergence of the Southwest Development Commission. It took me back to the initiative of the Dawn Development Agenda of the Western Nigeria, where all the Southwest governors came together and trying to put their heads together that, look, we have something to do. So if we're going to promote commercial activities, which is a critical sector, and a backbone of a nation, because most of the time the informal economy, that is where the informal economy operates, and that is where it grows, and that's where it emerges from and supplies and actually have a way of feeding the real economy of the state, where people do not really look to the state government and look to the federal government for employment opportunities, because there are infrastructures that have been laid in place by way of facilities where they can easily carry out their trade, and this aids the ecosystem where they can make money. So they are not dependent on the government. And if this happens, it's still going to come back to the government in way of tax, no matter how small it is.
That could only happen when there is some synergy and collaboration. But you see that for every government, whether state, local, and also for agencies, it seems more like competition. So one agency wants to outperform or outdo the other. So it seems like we are the only ones working. So there is no synergy. That would have made a lot of sense if they pull resources together and look at projects that benefit more than one region and say, okay, can we collaborate, put funds together, instead of waiting for the federal government to handle specific projects, region by region, state by region. Even state governments can do that. So that's why you find sometimes some federal roads will be in bad condition, and then the state government will say it's not their responsibility to do it, or when you do it, the government takes some time before refunding them that. Maybe you find that on one side of the road or one portion of the road that maybe directly linked to a particular state, that state governor will fix that, waiting for the federal government to reimburse them. Now, when you travel and get to the border of the next state, you find that the road is in a deplorable condition. So you don't find that development continuous or widespread, because everybody is doing their own thing and at their own time. Now you talked about the House of Reps, those who also have their own duty towards their constituency, because when you're campaigning, of course, some mention things like this, oh, they will facilitate road construction in this area, in this aspect, but we don't really see much of that.
Go and lobby
now,
for
when,
it.
At the flag off of the construction of the access road to the Second Niger Bridge, so the Minister of Works, David Mai, actually commended Edo State Governor and Delta State Governor for their own part towards road construction. And I think that there should be more happening in terms of road construction. Talking about the commercial activities that happen within that region, you know that you have to get through that bridge to get to the Onitsha main market. And that Onitsha main market serves as a hub for the southeastern region. Even those who are in the south still have to travel to Onitsha main market to have access to a lot of goods that they trade on. Those coming from the southern part of the southeastern part of the country also need to get to Onitsha. There's the Aba market there too. So there's a lot of commercial activities ongoing there. So if the traffic situation is decongested, it means that people can easily travel within good time, buy their goods, sell, and becomes very easy for trades to happen. So the turnover period is actually less than when you have to spend the entire day. If you have to travel from Benin, for instance, to Onitsha, before it used to be within a day. You can travel in the morning, get to the market, in the afternoon you're back, and nobody actually believes that you traveled to go buy goods. But when there's traffic on that First Niger Bridge, it takes a whole lot of time. So you find that people will now have to spend the entire day just to travel, make a journey of about 2 hours or less. So it's going to be a lot. But I wish that the synergy that you propose would actually happen. So that means we're having development faster even maybe local governments can connect too, can say, okay, what projects do we have? It seems like wishful thinking because Doc is laughing, yes. It seems like wishful thinking. Can we do this? It will save a lot of resources, but again, everybody works independently and nobody wants to have some joint collaboration because at the end of the day, who would you say did it? So who would you ascribe the credit and the honor to? That's another issue.
Yeah, but I think it's for us to also understand the nature of the states in Africa. And I think that would help us even in redefining some of the things and our expectations from those who govern us. I love Father Kuka's thesis at the Idahosa's 60th birthday, The Delusions of Democracy. And it so sank into my head when I was listening to his thesis, what he proposes about democracy and the way Africans look to democracy, and for him is delusional. And I think that is what it is, because what we're talking about here is understanding what are the real motives why we set up agencies. Are they really developmental in nature? And that's why I keep emphasizing this. When Claude Ake says that, see, we have never had development on the table. Once you create these other agencies, what you have is the fact that you now have enough avenue to settle those who help you to capture power. So, to that very extent, it is not development-oriented. It is settlement-oriented. So that is the thing. I did an analysis when I was doing my master's thesis of NDDC, its operations. The first 4 years of its operation, when it was created, that commission, the government was spending 80% of its resources on infrastructure, although the standard, of course, we cannot talk about the standard, but at least 80% of that expenditure was going on capital projects. But by the time the Ministry of Niger Delta was commissioned, or after some years, like after 4 years, you now discover there was a reverse, that NDDC was spending over 80% on overhead and only 20% was going to infrastructure. So that's also you are going to see, whether it's the Northeast or the Southwest or the Northwest or Northeast Development Commission. Because the whole idea around it is the sharing of the national cake and how much more gets to our region and who gets that really, but not what gets into the actual development of the entire space. And I think this is where, as citizens, we need a lot of enlightenment and consciousness so that we can see how we can actually deal with the issue of party politics in Africa, that we are not going to be expecting one man to bring his money to develop a party, and at the end of the day, we are also expecting that same man who has borrowed money from the bank to develop politics around himself to be able to win election, and we're expecting him that when he wins, eventually, he's going to be building roads and building hospitals. So this had to be communicated to the people who are on the grassroots to say, look, no more taking money from politicians. Let them go out so that we can decide, really, and make our vote really powerful, that anybody who does not meet the standard and expectations of the citizen, we can even recall them before their year ends.
Okay.
Yeah, because the power lies in us. Because if we make this process work, that the power is in the hand of the citizen, anybody, therefore, who aspire to lead their people must understand that, look, this is a burden. And that burden is that you can be recalled, you can be voted out, and such that you go there, you know you are serving the interests of the people, but you cannot expect them after they have settled you, and then you come back and say you want to record them to not work. So we must have to build that synergy to see how development eventually work with agencies that government sets up.
The thing is, it would even work. It will work. Whenever the people choose to recall, it will work. But we also know that the process of recall have now been politicized. So it's when a particular, maybe honorable member serving in the House of Representatives or a senator has erred or stepped on toes that they should not have, then the same constituents are used to recall them. But when they are not performing and delivering dividends for their constituents, the constituents never arise to say, let's use this instrument to recall, at least serve as a lesson to whoever we occupy this position again, that if you don't perform, you're out of office. Instead, we see that the only time recall happens is when there is maybe a particular senator or rep has stepped on toes, and so it's politically motivated, not because it's about development. Those certain issues can be used to cover it up.
But Blessing, that's the point I'm making. Registration of political parties. The politician mobilizes the people. He gives them money to come and register. Verification exercise. They spend money. Voting. They spend money. What they call it? They are going to meetings. They sponsor it. Now, all this is driven by one man, including those recall processes you are seeing. It's not that the citizens wake up one day and say, we want to recall somebody. It's just that when politicians are having conflict, they want politicians
sponsor the other.
Go and mobilize people. He's using his money. So the people, and why is because the distance between the states and the people is so large that until we bridge that gap, and the only way to bridge that gap is when we as individuals, we as followers of the people, to say to them, look, politics is supposed to be developmental. It's not to profit one person. Therefore, we don't need your money anymore. What we want is that we want representation. So now, when the citizens now begin to own the process of representation, that it is no longer one man who is coming to bribe them, to help them advance their career, you will see changes will happen.
Right.
So in which case, we can hold this representative accountable and say, look, this thing you didn't do well, and therefore we won't send you back again. So everybody will be working hard to come show report card. But as long as the big man is the one who is mobilizing, you know what mobilization means?
So,
all right,
okay.
so let's hope that.
Please, let me quickly drop this. I know, sorry. When you talked about participatory democracy or representative democracy that you spoke about, one solution that I think that we should adopt, just the way it is the responsibility of those who are contesting for political office to present manifesto and say this X, Y, Z are the projects and the things, the initiatives I want to carry out. The citizens should take it upon themselves in their constituency through the civil society organization to write out their desires and what they want a senator or a member of House of Reps coming to represent any senatorial district or constituents, that look, Mr. Contestants, these are all what we wanted. These are these things we wanted to be addressed in this our constituents, in our constituency. So if you get into office, these are the things you should be talking about, not the one that you have. Of course, your party has, but at least you should attend to these because we are the people living in this constituent. And if by chance you refuse, you deviate from these terms of reference, we are going to wield and invoke our instruments of recall. And we'll make sure we do that to get you out of office. I think we need to make an example of any senator, and I'm not referring to the current senator who is having a back and forth. I'm referring to any senator who deviate, who misrepresent his or her people in the National Assembly by not bringing the dividends of democracy by way of infrastructural development.
To you, and I think you are speaking
of the ideal
situation, but the truth of the matter is that those who are involved, I can tell you that they are not representing the people. You must take that one simple. Let's not make democracy in Africa look simplistic. Those who are there, they don't represent any interest. They bought their way into the office.
So it's business.
So you cannot buy your way into an office and say you are
responsible to the people.
Yes. So when we flip the card, that the people now become the sponsor, they become the sponsor of who represent them, then you can be talking about full representation, then we can actually be speaking about democracy in Africa.
All right, so for that to happen, it will mean that the party structures have to change. So where parties are waiting for one candidate to buy form for 100 million naira, and you're waiting for the candidate as well to sponsor campaigns, that has to change. There has to be structure where those who are members of the parties have their contribution, have their financial contribution towards it, so that it is not one man who has put in maybe $1 billion or almost $1 billion, millions of naira into the electioneering process. At the time they get there, it becomes business, so they have to recoup the funds that they have put in there through any means. And then during election, when they've shared 5,000 naira vote buying, when they bought the votes of people, it becomes very difficult for the people at the end of the day to even demand for those things. And even when they're demanding, you know how we now have a trend of protest and counter-protest. So while you have a particular group protesting that you are not working as a senator or a rep, you are not delivering to your constituency, you would also have sponsored counter-protests to silence or to drown the voice of those who are speaking up. So even if the recall were to happen, you can't have everybody involved, because some will be bought over and then they'll just be on the fence, not even wanting to do anything. And you need everybody to be on the same page. It's only when money is involved that you find a large number of people actually saying, let's recall, and then it becomes politically motivated, not because it's about development. We hope these narratives will change. The people will begin to think and know that what you decide to do as electorate, what you decide to do as the led, will either benefit you or it'll be something that should changes you at the end of the day. So let's be wise and know exactly what to do.